Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. If you ask most Christians, I think most of them would say that they would all love to have Christ's life manifested in their own life, that they would be able to manifest and express the life of Christ in their day-to-day living, and thereby bearing fruit for the Father in very significant ways. I think all of us would love to be able to say that Christ is definitely living in me. He's manifesting himself through me to others, and as such, bearing much fruit in my life. But how many of us are willing to pay the price for that to take place? How many of us really understand just what it takes for Christ's life to be manifested in us and expressed in us? The Apostle Paul understood it, and his companions understood it as well, and they were willing to pay the price. This is what he says in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, starting in verse 7. It says, "But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, so that the surpassing greatness of the power will be of God, and not from ourselves. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not despairing, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed." And then this is what we want to zero in on. Verse 10, "Always carrying about in the body the dying of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our body. For we who live are constantly being delivered over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus also might be manifested in our mortal flesh. So death works in us, but life in you." Paul and his companions were willing to give themselves over to death so that the life of Christ could be manifested in them, and that they might bear fruit among the Corinthians, and we could say also every church that they ministered to and people that they ministered to. But they were willing to allow themselves to be afflicted, perplexed, persecuted, and struck down. And they willingly underwent these things so that the life of Christ could come up. It's kind of like the broken alabaster jar, where you remember the woman who came with the alabaster jar, and she broke it, and the perfume, the fragrance came up out of it, and it filled the house. Well, this is kind of what Paul and his companions had experienced. Their bodies were kind of like that alabaster vial of the woman that is constantly, or was constantly, being afflicted, perplexed, persecuted, struck down, broken, we could say. But out of that came the beautiful manifestation of the life of Christ. And that would not come out unless first they allowed themselves to be broken, until they first allowed themselves to bear in their bodies the dying of the Lord Jesus. You know, in our lives, we have to have both. We can't just want the resurrected Christ and to have Christ in our lives, but at the same time live for ourselves and live for our own comfort and our own agendas. If we really want Christ to live in us and to be manifested in us, we have to be able to put self to death and not hold on to our lives in order that Christ's life can get a hold of us. In Galatians chapter 2 and verse 20, Paul says, "It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me." And that should be the mantra of all of us. Can it be said of us that it is no longer I who live? In other words, I'm no longer living for self. I'm no longer living for myself. I'm living for Christ. When we give our bodies over to the dying of the Lord Jesus, then we set ourselves up for the life of the Lord Jesus being manifested in our lives. So today, as we do our reading and as we set our hearts before the Lord, let's do some soul searching. You know, what is my life all about? Is it just about me? Is it just about me getting my way? Is it just about me being comfortable or seeking pleasure or other things like that? Is that what my life is all about? Or is my life truly about living for the Lord? And humbling myself before the Lord and putting myself in situations perhaps that are uncomfortable, that perhaps times in which we have to refrain from pleasure or whatever it might be, to where when a decision has to be made, we are always for the Lord. And we allow ourselves to undergo even maybe very difficult situations so that Christ can truly live through us and have an impact on the world around us. And these are some things we can reflect on and think about as we read 2 Corinthians, or the section of 2 Corinthians 4 we read today. So these are some things to think about. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.